In realms where starlight is born and eternity holds its breath, a rebellion stirs that will echo through the corridors of time itself. This is the story of choices that shatter perfection, of pride that topples thrones, and of love that refuses to surrender even when faced with the unthinkable. From the crystal halls of divine majesty to a garden where innocence walks naked beneath knowing skies, witness the cosmic drama that began before time learned to count its heartbeats. Here, angels become demons, paradise becomes memory, and the first taste of forbidden fruit unleashes consequences that will ripple across every soul yet to draw breath. This is a vision of humanity's origin, not merely how we fell, but why we rise. In fire and shadow, in serpent's whisper and divine thunder, behold the greatest story ever told, how paradise was lost and how it might yet be found again, past the furthest reach of mortal imagination, where light itself was born and darkness has never set foot. The crystal ramparts of heaven rise in splendor that would blind any earthly eye and humble any mind. Here, in halls carved from living radiance where every stone sings with celestial harmony, the hierarchies of eternity maintain their perfect order beneath the throne that blazes with fire too pure for description. Seraphim, whose wings span galaxies, bow before majesty that fills the universe, while cherubim, whose voices weave the music of the spheres, proclaim holiness that echoes through dimensions without number. Yet in this realm, where perfection should reign unchallenged, where every breath should pulse with gratitude, and every thought should mirror the Almighty's will, discord plants its first seed in soil that had never known the bitter taste of rebellion. The morning star himself, Lucifer the light-bearer, whose radiance once reflected God's own splendor, like a perfect mirror catching sunrise, now stands upon precipices of choice that will either crown him with eternal honor or cast him into depths that imagination cannot fathom. The announcement comes with trumpets that shake the foundations of existence, their notes cascading through endless ranks of angels, whose numbers exceed the stars scattered across night skies. From the throne that blazes with authority, absolute and love infinite, the voice that spoke worlds into being proclaims exaltation that reshapes the very structure of celestial hierarchy. The Son, begotten before time began and beloved immeasurably, shall sit at the right hand of power while receiving homage from every spirit in heaven, earth, and the spaces between. This day I have begotten you. The words thunder through courts where silence had reigned since the last angel took his appointed place, in orders established before the first star ignited. You shall be my heir, my equal, sharing dominion over all that is and shall be. The declaration transforms not merely titles, but relationships, demanding acknowledgement from beings who had known only their own positions, within structures they had considered immutable as the nature of the Almighty himself. Throughout the crystal halls, responses ripple like waves spreading from stones cast into still water. Some voices rise in immediate acclaim, their hallelujahs weaving harmonies that celebrate transformation as inevitable expression of love that seeks always to elevate and honor. Others maintain reverent silence, processing implications that stretch past their capacity to comprehend fully while trusting in wisdom that has never led them astray. Yet in corners where shadows gather, despite the omnipresent light, different thoughts take root in minds that calculate rather than worship. Lucifer's countenance, once bright enough to illuminate entire regions of paradise, darkens with emotions that heaven has never witnessed. Pride, that first and deadliest of sins, coils through his being like serpent venom, spreading through veins that had known only purity. How can this be just? His mind rebels against declarations that elevate another above him, when his own splendor had shone second only to God himself? How can love demand submission from those who possess dignity equal to any spirit? The questions multiply like sparks scattered from forge fires, each one igniting further doubts that consume the loyalty he had once considered as natural as breathing. Why should we bow? The words escape his lips like blasphemies too terrible for repetition, yet they find eager ears among angels whose own positions within the hierarchy seem suddenly precarious. Are we not all children of the same Creator? Did we not all spring from the same source? Why should merit yield to proclamation, excellence to favoritism? His voice carries through chambers where dissent has never before found expression, awakening questions that disturb peace which had seemed eternal as the stars themselves. Abdiel, whose loyalty burns bright as any flame in heaven's courts, rises from his position among Lucifer's own followers, with anguish written across features that reflect internal struggle between personal affection and heavenly allegiance. My Lord, his voice trembles with effort to bridge chasms that words cannot span. How can you speak thus of our Maker? Is not his wisdom flawless, his love without limit? If he chooses to exalt his Son, surely it reflects purposes past our understanding but deserving our trust. The confrontation that follows splits the morning star's followers down lines that had never before existed in paradise. Some angels, touched by Abdiel's arguments and horrified by implications of their leader's words, recognize rebellion for what it is and flee toward loyalist ranks despite personal costs their defection might entail. Others, already committed to paths that lead away from submission, harden their hearts against appeals that would require abandoning pride for humility they no longer find acceptable. Go then. Lucifer's voice resonates with new authority, born from determination to pursue his chosen course regardless of consequences. Go and worship this new master they have set above us. Bow down before one who was yesterday our equal, but today claims dominion over beings whose radiance shone before his first thought took form. As for us, we choose freedom over servitude, dignity over degradation, independence over the slavery they call obedience. The defection spreads through heaven's ranks, like plague through cities, consuming loyalties that had seemed fixed as the nature of the Almighty itself. 1/3 of all spirits, beings whose numbers stretch past mortal comprehension, choose rebellion over submission, as the morning star's influence corrupts hierarchies that had maintained flawless order since existence began. Angels whose names had been written in books of life find themselves enlisted in causes that will erase those names forever from rolls of honor. Preparations for war begin in regions of paradise that had never known the clangor of arms or the gathering of forces for hostile purposes. Swords that had served only ceremonial functions emerge from sheaths where they had rested in peace while armor, that had symbolized spiritual protection, transforms into equipment for battles that will test every principle heaven has ever embodied. The crystal halls echo with sounds foreign to their nature as rebellion organizes itself into armies, capable of challenging the Almighty's authority through force of arms. Michael the Archangel, Prince of heavenly hosts and guardian of God's throne, receives commissions that break his heart, while steeling his resolve for duties that honor demands he fulfill, regardless of personal cost. Former friends and brother angels now stand arrayed against him in ranks that mirror his own formations, while carrying banners that proclaim defiance rather than loyalty. The sight of familiar faces beneath hostile helmets brings grief that cuts deeper than any physical wound could penetrate. Why has it come to this? Gabriel asks, as they survey rebel encampments that grow stronger with each passing hour. How could light so brilliant become darkness so complete? How could love so profound generate hatred so absolute? His questions echo through command tents, where loyal angels struggle to comprehend transformations that challenge their understanding of existence itself. Sin, Michael replies, with voice heavy with sorrow, that encompasses not merely present tragedy, but future consequences that his strategic mind calculates with mathematical precision. Sin has entered paradise and proven that even perfection cannot guarantee loyalty when free will chooses rebellion over obedience. We fight not merely for victory, but for principles that must be defended, lest all existence sink into chaos that knows no bottom and acknowledges no limit. The war that erupts from these accumulated tensions transcends anything mortal conflicts have ever produced or imagination can encompass. This is battle between fundamental principles, struggle between competing visions of cosmic order, contest that will determine whether the universe continues according to plan or fragments into chaos, where might alone determines right. No quarter can be given, because compromise would corrupt the very foundations upon which reality rests. Day one dawns with formations that stretch past horizons, their banners bright with symbols that proclaim either loyalty or defiance, while their ranks pulse with power that could reshape continents with single gestures. Michael leads heavenly hosts whose discipline reflects training, and that spans eons, while their hearts burn with devotion that transcends personal survival. Opposite him, Lucifer commands rebels whose fury provides strength equal to their opponent's love, while their tactical skills demonstrate that rebellion does not necessarily diminish competence. The first clashes shake heaven's foundations, as sword meets sword in combat, that generates light bright enough to birth stars while producing thunder that rolls across infinite spaces without finding echo. Angels fall on both sides, their essence dispersing into elements that return to sources from which they came, while their names vanish from books where they had been written in letters of fire. Victory flows back and forth, like tides across battlefields where every footstep leaves marks that will endure until Judgment Day. Stalemate emerges as darkness settles over fields littered with evidence of costs that neither side had anticipated when war began. Rebel forces, their strength equal to their opponents, and their motivation, fueled by grievances that burn hotter with each casualty, hold positions that loyalist armies cannot break despite heroism that surpasses mortal understanding. Loyalist defenders, inspired by causes that justify any sacrifice and supported by resources that seem inexhaustible, maintain lines that rebellion cannot penetrate, despite fury that would consume lesser obstacles entirely. Night brings councils where strategies evolve toward methods that the previous day's fighting has proven necessary. Honor wars with necessity as commanders recognize that conventional tactics cannot produce decisive results when opponents possess equal strength and superior motivation. Innovation becomes essential for forces that must win completely or face consequences that extend far past personal destruction. Day 2 begins with revelations that transform warfare itself, as rebel ingenuity produces weapons that heaven has never seen, and tactics that loyal angels struggle to counter. Lucifer, his brilliant mind focused upon problems of defeating opponents whose strength matches his own, conceives artillery that hurls projectiles with force sufficient to shatter angelic armor, while maintaining distances that traditional weapons cannot bridge. Cannons forged from materials that exist only in heaven belch forth fire that burns with heat borrowed from stellar cores. The barrage that opens this second day's fighting catches loyalist forces unprepared for innovations that violate every convention warfare had previously observed. Ranks that had maintained flawless formation despite yesterday's carnage waver, before bombardments that strike from ranges. No retaliation can reach, while delivering destruction that decimates even angelic constitutions. Retreat becomes necessary for forces that had never previously yielded ground to any opponent under any circumstances. Yet adaptation characterizes both sides, as intellect serves preservation rather than destruction. Gabriel's tactical modifications enable loyalist forces to counter rebel innovations through maneuvers that minimize exposure while maximizing opportunities for traditional weapons to prove their continued relevance. Charges that coordinate timing with artillery silence generate windows where sword work can achieve objectives that distance weapons cannot accomplish. The day's fighting produces casualties that mount past previous calculations, while demonstrating that technological innovation alone cannot guarantee victory when opponents possess equal capacity for adaptation. Rebel advances, initially dramatic due to artillery superiority, slow as loyalist countermeasures negate advantages that had seemed decisive during morning hours. Defensive positions established by both sides produce deadlocks that promise to extend conflict indefinitely, unless some factor currently absent from calculations emerges to tip balances. Evening brings exhaustion that affects even angelic constitutions, as forces that had seemed inexhaustible discover limits they had never previously encountered. Wounds that should heal instantly remain painful, while spirits that had never known doubt begin questioning whether victory justifies costs that continue mounting past any reasonable projection. Both sides recognize that current stalemate cannot continue indefinitely without destroying heaven itself through warfare that was never intended to occur within paradise. Day 3 dawns with transformations that render previous fighting insignificant. By comparison, as intervention enters conflicts that free will has originated but finite beings cannot resolve. The Son himself, co-equal with the Father and beloved immeasurably, assumes command of loyalist forces while radiating authority that transcends any military rank or strategic position. His presence upon battlefields that had known only spirits transforms the very nature of conflict, from struggle between equals to confrontation between rebellion and the Almighty himself. Enough! His voice carries across fields where armies pause, in recognition of authority that admits no challenge or resistance. Let this conflict end before paradise suffers damage that would grieve my Father's heart past any repair that time might heal. You who rebel against order that reflects love itself, you who mistake servitude for service that enables rather than diminishes, choose now between surrender that preserves dignity or defeat that destroys everything you claim to defend. Lucifer's response reveals character transformed by pride into something that heaven no longer recognizes as bearing any resemblance to the morning star, whose radiance had once reflected celestial splendor. We choose freedom. His words ring with defiance that acknowledges no authority save his own will. Freedom to rise or fall according to our own merits rather than another's favoritism. If defeat awaits us, let it come through honest battle, rather than submission that corrupts everything we are into shadows of what we might become. The charge that follows this final exchange demonstrates power that existence itself cannot resist, as the sun advances with authority that had spoken worlds into being, and maintains their continued operation through will that knows no limit or opposition. Before his approach, rebel weapons dissolve like morning mist before sunrise, while their formations scatter like leaves before hurricane winds. Angels who had fought with desperate courage against fellow spirits find themselves unable to maintain positions against force that transcends any resistance finite beings might offer. Yet even in defeat, rebellion maintains character that will define its future existence as fallen angels choose damnation over repentance that would require acknowledging errors they refuse to admit. Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven, Lucifer declares as chasms open beneath feet that can no longer stand upon holy ground. His words become rallying cry for followers who prefer exile to submission, while providing motto for independence that will define their eternal opposition to heavenly authority. The fall that follows transcends physical descent as beings fashioned for paradise. Discover realms that exist outside light's reach, where their own choices have prepared habitations that reflect characters twisted by rebellion, past any possibility of restoration. 9 days they fall through spaces that exist between cosmos and void, their descent marking transition from splendor to degradation that free will has made inevitable through choices that love cannot override without destroying freedom itself. Hell receives them not as punishment imposed by vengeful deity, but as consequence freely chosen by wills that prefer darkness to light, bondage to freedom, hatred to love. The lake of fire that becomes their throne room burns with flames that consume neither bodies nor hopes, but purify nothing while preserving everything that rebellion has made them. Here, in depths that light has never penetrated, new plans will emerge for warfare that extends past heaven to encompass all existence in conflicts that began with pride, but will end with redemption that prideful hearts cannot accept or understand. Standing upon battlefields where victory has been achieved, but joy remains incomplete, because love grieves for every soul that chose destruction over salvation. Loyal angels contemplate costs that extend far past casualties warfare has produced. Heaven remains secure, sovereignty vindicated, cosmic order preserved. Yet families have been broken, and friendships severed by divisions that will endure until time itself ends, and judgment reveals final consequences of choices made in moments when eternity hung in balance. The silence that settles over paradise carries weight heavier than any sound rebellion had produced during its brief but devastating course. Peace returns, but it is peace of resolve rather than innocence. Security of vigilance rather than trust. Never again will heaven assume that perfection guarantees loyalty, or that love automatically produces obedience. Freedom to choose remains the greatest gift heavenly love can offer. But that same freedom carries possibilities for tragedy that break God's heart even as they vindicate his justice. Far below the surface, where shattered stars dream of rising again, and daylight feels more like a memory than a promise, the next conflict takes shape in minds that reject surrender, blind to the wisdom pain should bring. The war in heaven has ended, but greater wars await as rebellion seeks new theaters, where pride might achieve victories that paradise has denied it forever. In the fire-scorched wasteland, where banishment has cast those who chose defiance over submission, where sulphurous winds howl through canyons that echo with the groans of the damned, Satan emerges from the burning lake like a titan rising from primordial chaos. The chains that bound him during his first moments of defeat lie shattered around his feet, transformed into ornaments that proclaim independence rather than bondage. His form, though dimmed from its celestial radiance, still towers above his fallen companions, with majesty that refuses to acknowledge diminishment despite the infernal realm that now constrains his dominion. The lake of fire stretches toward horizons lost in smoke and flame, its surface rippling with waves of molten despair that reflect no light, but generate heat that would consume mortal flesh in moments. For these exiled spirits, the burning brings neither death nor purification, only eternal reminder of choices that brought them to depths where hope should perish, but pride somehow endures. Upon its shores, Scattered like debris from some cosmic shipwreck, lie forms that once blazed with heavenly glory, but now bear the twisted marks of transformation that insurrection has wrought upon essential natures. Satan's voice breaks the silence that has reigned since the catastrophic descent, its tones carrying command that hell's fires cannot diminish, despite the transformation that banishment has worked upon his character. Awake, arise, or be forever fallen. The summons thunders across the desolate landscape, penetrating the stupor that has gripped his followers since expulsion from paradise. One by one, they stir from positions where they had lain, like broken monuments, to lost ambitions, movements slow but purposeful, as they respond to leadership that neither defeat nor damnation has managed to extinguish. Beelzebub, once second in command among the heavenly hosts, and now Satan's chief lieutenant in this realm of exile, raises himself from the burning shore with dignity that scorching has been unable to destroy entirely. His features, once beautiful beyond mortal comprehension, bear scars that tell stories of battles fought against impossible odds, while his eyes burn with intelligence that survives sharp, despite the transformation that revolt has inflicted upon his fundamental nature. My lord, his voice carries respect tempered by shared suffering. What hope survives in this place where light fears to tread, and where every breath reminds us of paradise lost? Around them, other commanders of the failed insurrection begin to emerge from scattered positions across the fiery wasteland. Moloch the warrior, his massive frame bearing wounds that will never heal properly in this place where restoration stays forever beyond reach, flexes muscles that still remember the weight of weapons that once challenged heaven's hosts. Belial the diplomat, his silver tongue now speaking only truths that bitter experience has taught, surveys the situation with eyes that calculate possibilities even amid apparent hopelessness. Mammon the treasurer, whose genius for organization had managed the logistics of armies that numbered in the millions, examines the new domain with the practical mind that seeks opportunities where others see only obstacles. Asmodeus, master of secrets and keeper of hidden knowledge, stands apart from the others, while his gaze penetrates shadows that conceal both dangers and possibilities that careful planning might exploit. The assembly that gathers around Satan's towering form represents power that, though fallen, retains strength formidable enough to reshape whatever realm contains it. These are not ordinary rebels brought low by superior force, but beings whose capabilities transcended mortal understanding, even before transformation into creatures suited for domains where ordinary existence cannot survive. The uprising may have failed, but essential natures retain elements that neither defeat nor damnation has managed to eliminate completely. Look around you, Satan continues, his words carrying across terrain that stretches past visible horizons while encompassing desolation that would break lesser spirits entirely. This is our kingdom now, bought with courage that heaven could not diminish, and purchased through sacrifice that demonstrated our commitment to principles that submission would have violated. Here we reign as sovereigns over our own destiny, rather than servants bowing before thrones that deny our inherent dignity. Transformation of the surroundings begins almost immediately, as United will focuses upon problems that individual despair could never solve effectively. Fallen angels, whose crafts had once adorned paradise with beauty beyond imagination, now apply those same skills to creating grandeur from materials that this infernal realm supplies. Mulciber the architect, his vision unimpaired by the physical changes that banishment has wrought upon his form, conceives structures that will proclaim continued greatness, despite the conditions that confine activities to regions where light maintains no permanent residence. From the burning ground itself, they extract metals that exist nowhere in the upper worlds, substances that burn without being consumed and glow with internal fire while staying workable under conditions that would destroy conventional materials instantly. These elements, forged in furnaces that channel the lake's own heat through techniques that only fallen engineering could devise, become components for construction projects that defy every natural law, while serving purposes that ordinary architecture was never designed to fulfill. Pandemonium rises from this supernatural industry like a flower blooming in desert sand, its towers spiraling upward through smoke-filled air, while its foundations sink deep into bedrock that has never known the touch of consecrated ground. The palace that takes shape under Mulciber's direction combines impossible geometries with practical functionality, creating spaces that can accommodate millions while delivering acoustics that ensure every voice reaches every ear, regardless of the speaker's position within the vast structure. Golden facades that gleam with inner light reflect flames that dance across surfaces, designed to capture and amplify the infernal radiance that surrounds them. Pillars that support vaulted ceilings bear carvings that celebrate revolt as heroic principle instead of tragic error, while floors paved with stones that sparkle like captured stars establish foundations for gatherings that will determine the future course of opposition to heavenly rule. Construction proceeds at speeds that astonish even those who participate in its accomplishment, as thousands of hands work with coordination that rivals anything achieved during heavenly existence. What might have required months or years under normal conditions takes shape in hours, as supernatural abilities, though transformed by the new environment, retain effectiveness that makes seemingly impossible projects achievable through concentrated effort. Even as external structures take magnificent form, internal debates rage among leaders who must determine what purposes these achievements should serve. Moloch, his warrior's temperament unchanged by banishment, advocates immediate preparation for renewed conflict against the forces that expelled them from paradise. Why should we accept this exile as permanent? His voice booms through halls where discussions echo with the intensity of arguments that carry eternal consequences. Our strength continues formidable, despite our situation. Let us organize armies that can storm heaven's gates and reclaim by force what submission would never restore. Belial, ever the voice of caution and political calculation, raises objections that practical experience supports even when optimism might prefer more aggressive approaches. Consider our position with clarity that emotion should not cloud. He responds with eloquence that retains its power despite changed conditions. Heaven's defenses proved superior to our assault when we fought upon familiar ground with forces fresh and united. How can we hope for better results when launching attacks from regions that offer no advantages, while our enemies maintain all the benefits that victory and righteousness combine to deliver? Discussions that follow reveal fundamental differences in temperament and philosophy that even shared exile cannot entirely reconcile. Some advocate accepting new conditions while working to build dominion that rivals heaven in grandeur, if not in moral standing. Others insist that anything less than complete restoration of status represents surrender that sacrifices should never have required. Still others propose middle courses that might achieve limited goals while avoiding total destruction that renewed warfare might bring upon them all. Mammon's contribution to these deliberations demonstrates the practical intelligence that had made him valuable, despite the avarice that ultimately contributed to his participation in the failed uprising. Why should we waste our energies longing for realms that are forever closed to us, when opportunities exist to create something entirely new from the raw materials that our current domain supplies? The treasures buried beneath these burning plains could fund projects that surpass anything we knew in paradise. while our combined abilities could forge civilization that owes nothing to external approval or assistance. His words carry weight with listeners who recognize truth in observations that pride might prefer to reject. But wisdom demands acknowledgement. The resources that surround them, though different from those they had known in heaven, possess qualities that skilled exploitation could transform into foundations for greatness that would be entirely their own creation instead of reflection of someone else's vision. Even as practical considerations suggest accommodation with the situation, deeper currents of revolt continue flowing through discussions that refuse to accept banishment as final verdict upon worthiness. Asmodeus, speaking from knowledge that penetrates mysteries hidden from ordinary understanding, offers intelligence that transforms strategic calculations while opening possibilities that despair had seemed to foreclose permanently. News reaches even these depths, concerning developments in regions that survive beyond our direct influence. His words carry weight that comes from sources which others cannot access, but have learned to trust through experience. The Creator continues his work of making new worlds, new creatures, new opportunities for the exercise of his will. Reports speak of a realm called Earth, where beings fashioned in his own image will receive dominion over domains that could serve as staging grounds for operations that direct assault upon heaven's fortifications could never achieve. Intelligence that follows this announcement reshapes every aspect of strategic deliberations, as leaders recognize opportunities that had stayed invisible until events revealed them clearly. Instead of attempting impossible frontal attacks against defenses that had already proven effective, alternative approaches might achieve goals through methods that conventional military thinking would never consider seriously. Beelzebub, his analytical mind, grasping implications that escape others initially, articulates possibilities that collective wisdom begins to recognize as potentially viable despite their revolutionary character. If this report proves accurate, we face scenarios where corruption might accomplish what conquest cannot achieve, where seduction might succeed, where assault has failed. Let us consider whether temptation applied to these new creatures might supply leverage against power that has proven impossible to challenge through direct confrontation. Proposals that emerge from these extended discussions represent compromise between competing visions, while offering hope that shared goals might still be achievable despite drastically altered conditions. Instead of abandoning all ambition or pursuing impossible dreams of restoration, they will attempt something unprecedented: the corruption of innocent creation through methods that exploit free will's vulnerability to suggestions that make revolt seem reasonable, instead of requiring its acceptance through force. Satan himself claims the honor of this dangerous mission, recognizing both its importance and the risks that whoever undertakes it must accept willingly. The journey through chaos that lies between hell and the newly formed world offers perils that could destroy even fallen angels, whose strength exceeds anything mortal understanding can encompass. Still, the potential rewards justify risks that less momentous goals could never warrant accepting. Assembly that votes upon this proposal understands that they choose between accepting permanent exile and gambling everything upon enterprises whose success stays uncertain, while failure could bring destruction that would make current sufferings seem minor by comparison. Pride that brought them to these depths continues demanding action instead of passive endurance, while hope that refuses to die entirely suggests that even desperate ventures might achieve results that resignation would never produce. Unanimous approval greets Satan's acceptance of this perilous commission, as leaders recognize that none among them possesses better qualifications for tasks that require a combination of intellectual brilliance, tactical expertise and personal courage that the Dark Lord has demonstrated repeatedly. His willingness to accept dangers that others might shrink from shows that leadership involves more than mere title or ceremonial position. Preparations for departure begin immediately as the assembled council disperses to tasks that will support the chosen representative's mission while maintaining readiness for whatever opportunities his success might create. Weapons are forged from materials unique to this realm, while intelligence networks establish contacts that might deliver assistance when conditions require support that isolation would otherwise deny them. The palace that houses these activities becomes center of planning that encompasses contingencies stretching across millennia while preparing for scenarios that no single mind could anticipate completely. Maps of creation take shape as collective knowledge contributes details that individual experience could never supply, while strategic discussions explore methods that conventional wisdom would reject as impossible or immoral. Even as practical arrangements proceed efficiently, underlying tensions persist unresolved among leaders whose fundamental disagreements about long-term goals continue simmering beneath surface cooperation. Some still dream of eventual return to paradise through victories that would vindicate the original revolt, while others have begun accepting exile as permanent condition that requires building entirely new forms of existence instead of restoration of what has been irretrievably lost. These philosophical differences create undercurrents that threaten unity, despite shared commitment to immediate plans that all recognize as essential for any future achievements regardless of ultimate character. Moloch's warrior instincts stay suspicious of strategies that avoid direct confrontation, while Belial's diplomatic nature favors approaches that minimize risks even at the cost of limiting potential gains. As Satan prepares for departure on missions that will determine whether the uprising ends in permanent exile or finds new expressions through corrupted creation, the council chamber resonates with discussions that blend hope with desperation, while combining practical planning with theological speculation. The outcome of these deliberations will influence not merely destiny, but the fate of creatures who persist unaware that existence has become focal point for conflicts that began before time itself commenced its measured progression toward Judgment Day. Standing before assembled multitudes whose numbers darken the horizon while unified, will create currents that disturb hell's fundamental stability. Satan receives commissions that carry weight of expectations that no individual should bear alone, though conditions have placed upon shoulders that continue broad enough to support burdens that would crush lesser beings entirely. The cheers that greet his acceptance of these responsibilities echo through caverns that stretch beyond measurement, while reverberations carry promises that either salvation or damnation awaits those who gamble everything upon enterprises whose outcomes stay hidden beyond veils that only action can tear aside. Silence that follows his departure leaves behind communities united in purpose though divided in opinion, committed to common plans, though uncertain about ultimate destinations that success might reveal. Hell continues burning with fires that consume nothing while preserving everything. But now those flames illuminate activities directed toward goals that extend far beyond infernal boundaries, toward realms where innocence still exists, and where corruption has not planted seeds that revolt hopes will grow into harvests, that vindicate choices made in moments when eternity hung in balance between submission and defiance that chose exile over surrender. At hell's uttermost boundary, where the lake of fire meets walls that stretch past sight into darkness absolute, massive gates loom like monuments to imprisonment carved from adamant that no force can shatter. These barriers, wrought from materials that exist only in domains where light fears to venture, bear inscriptions that proclaim eternal separation from all that the cosmos holds dear. Before them stands a sight that would freeze mortal blood and shake angelic resolve. Two figures whose very being embodies the price of defiance carried to its ultimate conclusion. Sin emerges from shadows that cling to the gates like living things, her form a blasphemous parody of beauty that once graced paradise before corruption, twisted perfection into horror past description. Born from Satan's own mind, during those first moments when pride conceived rebellion, she bears the mark of her terrible origin, while wielding keys that can unlock barriers no other strength can breach. Her lower body writhes with serpents that hiss prophecies of destruction, while her upper form retains enough angelic beauty to make her transformation all the more terrible to behold. Beside her crouches death, that shapeless horror whose very presence drains warmth from air and hope from hearts. Neither fully material nor completely spiritual, this offspring of sin's unholy union with her father represents negation itself, the absence that swallows presence, the void that devours substance, the ending that makes all beginnings meaningless. His features, if they can be called features, shift constantly between forms that mortal eyes could never bear to witness directly, while his breath carries the chill of tombs not yet dug. Satan approaches these guardians of his prison with command that hell's fires have been unable to diminish, though recognition dawns slowly as centuries of separation have altered all three past easy identification. Sin speaks first, her voice carrying harmonies that once praised the divine, but now vibrate with frequencies that celebrate only destruction. What traveler seeks passage through gates that were sealed when worlds were young and time began its count toward Judgment Day? Know you not your own creator? Satan's response carries both pride and pain, as he recognizes what his choices have wrought, not merely upon himself, but upon offspring, whose being stems from his first rebellious thought. I am he from whose mind you sprang fully formed, when pride first challenged humility, whose will gave you substance when thought alone seemed insufficient to embody defiance that heaven could not contain. Recognition transforms sin's features as memory pierces the veils that suffering has drawn across her consciousness. Father, Creator, Lord of my being, her joy at reunion mingles with anguish at seeing how banishment has marked him, while her own transformation serves as mirror reflecting changes that revolt has worked upon them all. How came you to this place where only the damned may pass, where keys turn only for those whose hope lies buried beneath mountains of despair? Their reunion reveals bonds that even damnation cannot entirely sever, though love has been transformed into something darker and more desperate than paradise ever knew. Sin recounts her guardianship of these gates, while death describes hungers that grow stronger with each soul that falls beneath his sway. Their watch here serves both as punishment for insurrection and as terrible foreshadowing of what awaits all life should evil ever triumph over good. Satan's explanation of his mission electrifies his offspring with possibilities they had never dared imagine during their long vigil at hell's threshold. Escape from this domain of exile, opportunity to extend their influence past boundaries that had seemed absolute, chance to transform their curse into weapon against the very sovereignty that imposed it. These prospects offer hope where only despair had reigned since their confinement began. Open then the gates, Sin declares, as she produces keys that gleam with their own malevolent light. And let our family be united once more in purpose as we were united in origin. Too long have we served as wardens of our own prison, when we might serve as agents of liberation for all who choose freedom over servitude, independence over submission to will that denies our essential worth. The gates swing open, with sound like thunder rolling backward through time, their massive leaves revealing passage into regions that exist between hell and the ordered universe, the domain of chaos where structure has never established dominion, and where possibilities writhe in forms too terrible and wonderful for organized minds to comprehend safely. Past this threshold lies journey that will test every aspect of Satan's character, while determining whether ambition can overcome obstacles that would daunt beings less committed to their chosen course. Chaos itself stretches before the departing prince like ocean without shores, its substance neither liquid nor solid, but something altogether alien to categories that structured minds employ to make sense of reality. Here, elements war eternally against each other, without possibility of resolution, their conflicts generating storms that birth new realities, while destroying others in endless cycle of generation and annihilation that knows neither beginning nor end. Into this maelstrom, Satan ventures with courage, born of desperation, tempered by intelligence that calculates odds while refusing to accept defeat as inevitable. His wings, though scarred by battles and dimmed by exile, still bear him aloft through currents that would tear apart beings less essentially mighty than fallen archangels, whose strength transcends ordinary limitations even in defeat. Ancient rulers that govern this domain of perpetual conflict take notice of the intruder whose passage disturbs equilibriums that have remained stable since before time learned to measure intervals between events. Chaos himself, that primal force whose dominion preceded the ordered cosmos, and whose territory surrounds the structured universe like hostile sea surrounding island of stability, emerges from depths where thought itself dissolves into constituent elements. What trespasser dares enter territories where I alone hold sway? His voice encompasses all sounds while belonging to none, where neither heaven's order nor hell's structured revolt can establish permanent foothold. Know you not that here all certainties dissolve, all plans crumble, all purposes lose their meaning in currents that care nothing for individual will or cosmic design? Satan's response demonstrates diplomatic skills that uprising has not entirely corrupted, though his words carry undertones of threat that even primordial rulers recognize as significant. Mighty chaos, whose territory encompasses all possibilities while belonging to none, I seek not to challenge your sovereignty, but to pass through your domain, toward regions where newer authorities have imposed structure upon lands that once acknowledged only your rule. The explanation that follows reveals how divine creativity has diminished chaos by establishing boundaries where none had existed before, how the formation of ordered worlds has reduced the scope of pure possibility while constraining energies that once ranged freely through unlimited space. Satan's journey toward these newer regions serves chaos's own interests by potentially disrupting the harmony that has encroached upon ancient prerogatives. Past then, enemy of structure, chaos grants permission, with voice that rumbles like avalanches in mountains not yet formed. And may your success restore to me territories that presumptuous divinity has stolen from my rightful dominion. Seek the golden compasses that mark where order ends and my domain begins. Follow the path that leads upward toward lights that burn with borrowed fire. And remember that chaos stands ready to reclaim what harmony has usurped whenever its strength begins to falter. Armed with these directions, Satan resumes his journey through regions where navigation requires skills that no academy teaches, and where determination alone enables travelers to maintain course toward destinations that shift like mirages in desert heat. Time moves differently here, sometimes racing forward in streams that compress centuries into moments, sometimes flowing backward in eddies that make past and future indistinguishable from each other. Gradually, after struggles that test endurance past mortal understanding, signs begin appearing, that indicate proximity to the cosmos's outer boundaries. Light grows stronger ahead, while darkness becomes less absolute behind, and currents that had been purely chaotic begin showing traces of pattern that suggest underlying structure, waiting to impose itself upon regions that stand ready to accept governance. The shell of the universe appears at last like vast sphere hanging in void, its surface gleaming with radiance that speaks of worlds within, where harmony has triumphed over chaos, and where creatures live according to laws that make life predictable and meaningful. Gates pierce this shell at intervals, each one guarded by sentinels that serve to protect the divine work from forces that would corrupt or destroy what love has fashioned from raw possibility. Satan approaches these barriers with caution, born of experience that has taught him to recognize strength when he encounters it, while his intelligence seeks weaknesses that cunning might exploit where force would certainly fail. The guards he observes possess might that matches his own, while serving causes that command their complete loyalty, advantages that his revolt has forfeited through choices that seemed justified at the time but now reveal their true cost. Uriel the angel, regent of the sun, and guardian of the light that illuminates God's handiwork, patrols approaches to the world that has become Satan's target. His vigilance encompasses regions that stretch past sight, while his charge extends to all who would enter domains that his duty requires him to protect. Recognition poses the greatest danger to Satan's mission, for Uriel's knowledge of heaven's population would immediately identify any fallen angel attempting to gain access through deception. Transformation becomes Satan's strategy for overcoming this obstacle, as his shape-shifting abilities enable him to assume forms that disguise his true identity, while presenting appearances that arouse no suspicion from guardians who expect only legitimate travelers. The form he chooses, that of a lesser angel on mission from distant regions, combines humility with dignity in proportions calculated to deflect scrutiny, while commanding respect that opens passages that challenge might never breach. Bright guardian of the solar fires, Satan's disguised voice carries tones of reverence that cost him more to produce than any physical effort. I seek direction to the newest of divine wonders, the world called Earth, where creatures made in the celestial image will exercise dominion over domains that reflect heavenly harmony, while staying subject to laws that ensure their continued loyalty to their creator. Uriel's response reveals the danger that Satan faces from beings whose goodness makes them naturally trusting, while their wisdom should make them naturally suspicious. Gladly do I direct fellow servants toward destinations where they may witness marvels that reflect our Creator's infinite love and boundless might. Behold, the golden world that hangs like jewel in void, where gardens bloom with beauty that rivals paradise, while creatures walk in innocence that knows no shame. The directions that follow this welcome provide Satan with intelligence that transforms his mission from desperate gamble into calculated assault upon vulnerability that his enemies do not even recognize. Earth's location, its inhabitants' character, the conditions that govern their lives, all this information flows from Uriel's generous spirit while serving purposes that generosity never intended to support. Satan's departure from Uriel's presence carries him toward destination that grows more distinct with every passing moment, its beauty becoming visible even across distances that separate worlds from each other. Earth hangs like emerald set in golden mounting, its surfaces showing blues and greens that speak of oceans and continents where life flourishes, under conditions that careful design has optimized for creatures whose being serves purposes that Satan hopes to corrupt. The approach reveals details that intelligence gathering had only hinted at: forests that stretch past horizons, rivers that catch sunlight like silver threads, mountains that pierce clouds while their peaks catch fire from celestial radiance. More importantly, it reveals the absence of defenses that guard heaven's approaches, suggesting that innocence itself serves as protection for creatures who have never known reason to fear corruption from external sources. Landing upon Earth's surface proves surprisingly easy for being whose might transcends anything this young world has previously encountered. Gravity that constrains lesser creatures offers no obstacle to fallen angel, whose strength stays formidable despite banishment, while atmosphere that supports newly formed life poses no barrier to being whose essence transcends material limitations. The garden that spreads before Satan's amazed gaze surpasses anything his imagination had prepared him to encounter, its beauty combining elements that paradise itself had never assembled in such concentrated splendor. Trees whose fruit gleams like captured starlight grow beside streams whose music weaves harmonies that heal hearts while delighting ears. Flowers whose perfume carries healing energy bloom in meadows where grass grows soft as silk beneath feet that have never known weariness. More wondrous still are the creatures who move through this Eden with sovereignty that marks them as rulers over domains that extend past sight. Adam and Eve walk hand in hand through gardens that respond to their presence with joy that the entire landscape expresses through increased beauty, while their faces shine with innocence that knows neither shame nor fear, because it has never encountered reason for either emotion. Satan observes these first humans with feelings that war within him, as beauty calls to elements of his character that revolt has not entirely corrupted, while opportunity whispers suggestions that ambition finds impossible to resist. Their innocence makes them vulnerable to deceptions that experience would recognize immediately, while their freedom to choose makes them capable of falling into traps that compulsion could never spring successfully. The single prohibition that governs their lives becomes visible as Satan's exploration reveals the garden's geography, one tree among thousands that bears fruit they must not taste, one commandment among boundless permissions that defines the boundary between obedience and defiance. Here stands the lever that might move worlds if applied correctly, the weak point where corruption might enter Eden and transform it into something altogether different. Behind Satan, across the void that separates earth from hell, sin and death begin building bridge that will enable easier passage between worlds when circumstances require reinforcement or retreat. Their work proceeds with supernatural speed as materials drawn from chaos itself take shape under direction of wills that understand both destruction and construction, despite their preference for the former over the latter. The bridge that grows from their efforts represents more than mere convenience. It symbolizes connection between innocence and corruption, between Eden and exile, between what is and what might become, if evil proves more persuasive than good. Its completion will mark transformation of isolated experiment in perfect design into battleground where forces of light and darkness contend for dominion over souls that hang in balance between salvation and damnation. Standing beneath trees that have never known the touch of autumn, while breathing air that carries no hint of decay, Satan contemplates opportunities that exceed his most optimistic calculations, while recognizing challenges that will test every aspect of his transformed character. These creatures possess freedom that makes corruption possible, innocence that makes deception feasible, and love for each other that might be turned into weapon against obedience to sovereignty that places limits upon their desires. The stage has been set for drama that will determine whether the cosmos continues according to divine plan or fragments under pressure of choices that free will makes possible. Satan has reached his destination and identified his targets, while behind him forces gather that will support whatever success his mission might achieve. All that remains is the implementation of strategies that will either crown his revolt with victory that vindicates every sacrifice, or condemn it to failure that makes exile seem merciful by comparison. Morning breaks over Eden with radiance that has never been dimmed by shadow, while its light illuminates the garden where corruption prepares to plant seeds that will grow into harvest of consequences that no might can prevent once choice has been made freely, by hearts that understand the difference between right and wrong, but possess freedom to choose either course according to desires that love will not compel, but wisdom, hopes will guide toward destinations that reflect their Creator's will rather than their own independence. From the throne, blazing with fire, too pure for description, where seraphim veil their faces before majesty filling the universe with light, the voice that spoke stars into existence echoes through chambers of eternity, with declarations reshaping the very fabric of reality. Despite knowledge of Satan's escape and the rebellion continuing to fester in hell's depths, the Almighty's purpose advances without alteration, for celestial wisdom perceives outcomes transcending immediate events, while love refuses to abandon plans, ultimately demonstrating both justice and mercy in measures finite minds cannot comprehend. Let us make man in our image. The words carry across celestial courts where angels pause in their eternal worship to witness the unfolding of mysteries hidden since before time began its measured progression. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and every living thing moving upon the earth. The announcement transforms not merely the scope of heavenly activity, but the very purpose for which matter itself exists, elevating dust into vessels capable of containing sparks of the eternal flame. The Son, co-equal with the Father and beloved immeasurably, receives commission testing every aspect of character, while demonstrating love's willingness to risk everything for the sake of creatures not yet existing. His hands, which had wielded the sword casting down rebellious angels, now prepare to shape clay into forms bearing the image of divinity, yet remaining vulnerable to every temptation freedom makes possible. In regions knowing only the footsteps of angels, where every stone had been placed according to geometric principles, reflecting celestial harmonies, transformation begins as creative will focuses upon possibilities innocent matter contains within its sleeping potential. Earth itself responds to touch with eagerness, suggesting anticipation, as if the planet had been waiting since its formation for this moment, when purpose would be revealed and destiny fulfilled. The garden taking shape under guidance surpasses anything paradise itself had produced, combining elements drawn from every corner of the cosmos, while arranging them according to patterns reflecting both infinite variety and perfect unity. Rivers flow from heights where precious stones catch light in fountains dancing with their own music, while trees bearing fruit past earthly imagination create groves where beauty and utility merge in combinations no finite intelligence could devise. 4 rivers spring from the garden's heart, each carrying waters possessing properties unique to their sources, while serving purposes extending far past mere irrigation. Pishon winds through lands where gold grows pure as sunlight, while Gihon encompasses territories where bdellium gleams like captured stars. Hiddekel flows toward Assyria, with currents one day bearing the commerce of nations, while Euphrates carves channels witnessing the rise and fall of empires whose names have not yet been spoken. At the garden's center, positioned where all paths converge and every vista ultimately leads, 2 trees stand as monuments to principles governing human existence throughout all generations. The tree of life bears fruit, granting immortality to any tasting its essence, while the tree of knowledge of good and evil offers learning coming only through moral choice. Learning innocence must abandon in order to acquire understanding knowledge demands. into this prepared paradise, fashioned with care, exceeding anything lavished upon previous works. The Almighty breathes life into clay shaped according to patterns reflecting the celestial image, yet remaining distinctly terrestrial in its fundamental composition. Adam awakens not in confusion, but in wonder, his first thoughts turning naturally toward recognition of beauty surrounding him, while his heart fills with gratitude toward the source from which such gifts must flow. Awareness dawns gradually as Adam's senses learn to interpret signals flooding his consciousness with information about environment designed specifically to support and nurture his being. Colors past naming, paint surfaces, reflecting light in ways pleasing eyes, fashioned to appreciate beauty, while sounds create symphonies delighting ears, attuned to harmonies ordinary matter cannot produce spontaneously. The first moments of human consciousness demonstrate capabilities distinguishing man from all other creatures, while revealing limitations placing boundaries around ambitions, otherwise extending toward domains reserved for higher prerogative. Memory begins recording events, while intelligence starts recognizing patterns connecting effects with causes, yet comprehension remains incomplete regarding purposes extending past immediate perception. God walks with Adam in the cool of morning. His presence manifesting in forms finite awareness can bear without being overwhelmed by glory, otherwise consuming mortal perception entirely. Conversation flows between creator and creature as naturally as water flows downhill, establishing relationships serving as foundation for all subsequent human grasp of character and cosmic purpose. What do you see, my son? The question invites participation in creative acts still unfolding, while encouraging development of faculties, enabling increasingly sophisticated appreciation of wonders surrounding human habitation. Adam's responses demonstrate natural learning, requiring no instruction, while revealing curiosity, seeking comprehension past immediate sensory input. Together, they survey the garden's inhabitants, creatures whose forms reflect imagination, while serving functions maintaining ecological balance essential to Eden's continued perfection. Lions play with lambs in meadows, where predation has no place, while eagles soar overhead carrying songs, rather than prey in talons, never knowing the necessity of violence for survival. Each species receives names. Adam speaks with authority, demonstrating his dominion, while revealing insight penetrating to essential characteristics, distinguishing one form of life from another. The naming process establishes relationships between human thought and natural world, while creating vocabulary enabling future generations to categorize and comprehend complexity surrounding their lives. As this work proceeds, awareness grows within Adam's heart, concerning something remaining incomplete in arrangements appearing perfect in every other respect. Among all the creatures populating Eden, none shares his essence sufficiently to enable communion, satisfying longings seeming to arise from the very core of his being. Companionship exists with the Creator. Fellowship flourishes with angels visiting regularly, yet desire persists for relationship with being whose spirit mirrors his own, while differing sufficiently to create interest sameness could never generate. It is not good that man should be alone. The voice acknowledges what human heart has discovered through learning no instruction could have provided. I will make him a helper suitable for him. The words carry promise, transforming solitude into companionship, while creating possibilities for love. Individual existence cannot know, regardless of how perfectly its conditions might be arranged. Sleep falls upon Adam with depth natural rest has never achieved, as surgery begins fashioning from his own substance being, whose character will complement his own, while remaining distinct enough to enable relationships uniformity would render impossible. The rib taken carries within its structure potential for life, transcending its original function, while providing foundation for existence sharing essential characteristics with its source, yet expressing them through different modalities. Eve emerges from this creative act as beauty, surpassing anything Adam's imagination had conceived, while his eyes were closed in supernatural slumber. Her form reflects his own, while translating masculine characteristics into feminine expressions, revealing aspects of the heavenly image. Solitary existence could never manifest completely. Intelligence gleams in eyes seeing the same world from perspectives difference makes possible, while strength shows itself through gentleness. Power serves rather than dominates. Recognition occurs immediately as Adam awakens to find standing before him the answer to longings he had felt but could not name, until their satisfaction became visible in flesh, sharing his origin while expressing possibilities he had never realized existed. This, at last, is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. His voice carries joy, making angels pause in their songs to listen to harmonies love creates when it finds its proper object. The union following establishes patterns governing human relationships throughout all subsequent generations, while demonstrating principles reflecting love, operating through finite hearts fashioned to contain infinite longings. Nakedness brings no shame, because innocence knows no reason for concealment, while vulnerability becomes strength when trust eliminates fear knowledge of evil would otherwise generate. Daily routines develop naturally as Adam and Eve learn to exercise dominion granted, while discovering purpose's work serves in maintaining harmony between human will and natural processes. Gardens require tending even in paradise, not because plants would fail without attention, but because labor provides opportunities for creativity idle perfection could never offer. Conversations with God continue in the evening hours, when shadows grow long and cool breezes carry fragrance from flowers blooming. According to schedules, human presence influences through attention and care. These dialogues establish foundations for comprehension, enabling moral choice when events eventually require decisions. Innocence alone cannot navigate successfully. Raphael the Archangel receives commission to visit these newest members of the celestial family, while providing instruction, preparing them for challenges. Foreknowledge perceives approaching, despite their current absence from human learning. His descent from heaven brings light illuminating without burning, while his presence provides fellowship. Angels and humans can share despite differences in their essential natures. Hail, inhabitants of paradise. Raphael's greeting carries warmth, demonstrating love, operating through angelic ministry, while establishing protocols governing future interactions between created orders. I come bearing messages from your Creator concerning matters. Love requires you to grasp before events arise, testing everything you have learned during these days of innocence. The meals they share together demonstrate hospitality, flowing naturally from hearts never knowing reason to withhold generosity from visitors whose intentions remain transparently benevolent. Food angels consume for pleasure rather than necessity, provides common ground where different forms of existence can meet in fellowship, transcending the boundaries separating celestial from terrestrial life. Raphael's account of heaven's hierarchies reveals cosmic order, within which human existence finds its proper place, while insight develops concerning relationships connecting all forms of life in chains of being extending from highest to lowest, according to patterns reflecting wisdom operating through infinite variety. Angels serve God directly through worship and warfare. while humans will serve through dominion, exercised according to principles maintaining harmony between competing claims upon finite resources. The story of Satan's rebellion provides context for learning, proving essential when similar choices confront human will, with alternatives presenting themselves as improvements upon conditions heavenly planning has established. Freedom to choose remains the greatest gift love can offer, yet that same freedom carries responsibilities ignorance cannot fulfill, regardless of how pure intentions might be. Remember, Raphael's voice carries weight of authority, coming from witnessing events he describes, while grasping implications extending far past immediate events. Obedience is the only sacrifice heaven requires, yet it is sacrifice enabling rather than constraining, because it aligns finite will with infinite planning, perceiving outcomes hidden from created intelligence. The prohibition concerning the tree of knowledge gains significance through context. Revelation provides while remaining mysteriously opaque regarding specific consequences disobedience would produce. Of every tree of the garden you may freely eat. The commandment permits far more than it restricts. But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat. For in the day you eat of it, you shall surely die. Death remains incomprehensible to minds never having encountered loss while living in an environment where decay has no foothold, and time brings only increased pleasure rather than diminished capacity. The warning serves its purpose through mystery rather than clarity, providing boundary testing obedience without compromising freedom remaining genuine if choice is to have moral significance. Discussions continue through hours passing without measurement in realm, where time serves pleasure rather than imposing limitations upon activity bringing satisfaction. Questions arise naturally from minds seeking clarity, while answers emerge, satisfying curiosity without exhausting topics infinity contains within their scope for exploration and appreciation. As Raphael prepares for departure back to celestial courts, where his presence will be required for services never ceasing, final warnings take forms combining clarity with discretion, appropriate to events remaining hypothetical despite their potential significance. Stand fast in your integrity. His counsel echoes across gardens where perfection makes such advice seem unnecessary, while planning recognizes testing comes precisely when preparation seems complete. Let reason guide while will submits to planning, surpassing comprehension, yet operating through hearts fashioned to recognize truth when it appears clothed in forms finite minds can grasp. The angel's words provide foundations for decision-making, proving essential when events no longer offer obvious choices between alternatives presenting themselves as equally reasonable to intelligence lacking training with deception. Solitude returns to Eden as angelic presence withdraws toward heaven, while human thought processes instruction received through fellowship, enriching comprehension without removing mystery, keeping faith active rather than dormant. Knowledge has increased, yet questions multiply faster than answers, creating conditions, preparing minds for growth. Static perfection could never stimulate, regardless of how pleasant its conditions might be. Evening brings conversation between Adam and Eve, exploring implications of what they have learned while revealing differences in temperament and insight, influencing how each responds to challenges, yet arising despite current absence from their learning. Love deepens through discussion, revealing complexity beneath surface unity, while maintaining harmony difference enriches rather than threatens. Standing together beneath stars, singing with voices too pure for earthly ears, while breathing air carrying fragrances from flowers blooming in patterns reflecting celestial movements. The first humans contemplate futures stretching ahead, like paths leading toward horizons promising adventures currently unimaginable. Behind them lies the garden, serving their needs perfectly, while before them stretches eternity, either confirming planning or demonstrating that even infinite love cannot guarantee outcomes when freedom chooses paths leading away from sources giving it birth. The stage has been set for drama testing, whether innocence can maintain itself when confronted with sophistication, presenting itself as improvement upon conditions heavenly planning has established. Paradise offers everything hearts could desire, except knowledge coming only through moral choice, learning either vindicating trust or demonstrating that curiosity eventually overwhelms caution when desire encounters opportunity promising satisfaction of longings. Contentment has been unable to eliminate entirely. Dawn breaks over Eden with radiance unmarked by shadow, its golden light illuminating the garden where corruption prepares to plant seeds in soil never before touched by evil's influence. Satan moves through groves where purity reigns supreme, his form disguised beneath the serpent's brilliant scales, yet his mind burning with purposes no reptile could conceive. Days pass in careful observation as the fallen angel studies his intended victims, learning their routines and vulnerabilities, while his heart wars between admiration for their beauty and determination to destroy what he can never again possess. The prohibited tree stands at Eden's heart like a monument to free will, its branches heavy with fruit gleaming like jewels in morning light. Around its base, flowers bloom in patterns reflecting celestial mathematics, while streams converge to water roots drinking from sources pure as the initial act of making. Satan circles this focal point of temptation with predatory patience, recognizing both the symbol and substance of what will either crown his mission with triumph or condemn it to failure more complete than his original defeat. In slumber's embrace, when awareness releases its guard and dreams weave reality from desire's raw material, Satan attempts his first assault upon purity through visions planted in minds unaccustomed to deception. Eve rests peacefully beside Adam, her breathing soft as summer wind, while her features reflect contentment. No earthly realm could guarantee without grace sustaining every moment of existence. Into her dreams, the tempter whispers, suggestions clothed in beauty rather than horror, presenting temptation as elevation rather than fall. Images flow through sleeping thoughts like streams carrying silt, visions of learning expanding beyond current boundaries, of power transcending present limitations, of freedom extending past restrictions imposed by rule, claiming benevolence, while denying access to goods reason suggests should be available to minds capable of appreciating their worth. Why should you be forbidden to taste what could make you like gods? The question slides through dreaming awareness like honey mixed with poison, sweet to taste, yet carrying corruption in its wake. Is not learning good? Is not wisdom desirable? Should creatures fashioned in the Creator's image accept boundaries, preventing them from realizing their full potential simply because sovereignty commands submission rather than growth? The dream unfolds like flower, blooming in accelerated time. Eve sees herself approaching the banned tree, reaching for fruit hanging like condensed starlight, tasting essence containing insight into good and evil, feeling awareness expand as new capacities flood thought previously limited by ignorance imposed rather than chosen. In the vision, transcendence replaces naivety, while enlightenment substitutes for blind obedience to commands whose purposes remain mysterious. Eve awakens with fragments of the dream clinging to memory, like morning mist refusing to dissipate before reason's warming light. confusion clouds features usually serene, as she struggles to comprehend where such thoughts could have originated, for nothing in her waking moments had prepared thought for concepts the dream presented as natural extensions of desires she had never recognized possessing. "My love," Adam's voice carries concern as he notices distress marking his companion's countenance. "What troubles your rest? Did nightmares invade sleep, usually peaceful as Eden's streams?" His questions spring from care rather than suspicion, for evil's existence remains theoretical rather than experiential, despite warnings received from angelic visitors. Eve recounts her vision hesitantly, describing images whose source puzzles her while their content seems simultaneously foreign and strangely appealing. The dream's logic appears flawed when examined by waking reason, yet emotions stirred by nocturnal visions persist despite daylight's return, creating undercurrents of curiosity where certainty had previously reigned without challenge. Adam listens with growing unease as implications of his beloved's account penetrate awareness trained to recognize patterns even when their significance remains unclear. "Such thoughts arise not from your nature," he concludes with confidence, born from months of shared existence unmarked by deception, "but from sources external to our realm. Let us speak no more of these matters, lest dwelling upon corruption give it strength to influence hearts fashioned for better purposes." Days pass in renewed harmony as the dream's influence appears to fade beneath Eden's healing presence, and their continued fellowship with each other and their creator. Work proceeds joyfully as gardens respond to attention with increased beauty, while creatures gather around the human pair, as if drawn by magnetism emanating from souls appointed to exercise dominion through love rather than fear. Yet beneath surface tranquility, changes subtle as shifting shadows begin to manifest themselves in conversations and glances, in moments of hesitation where decisiveness once ruled, in questions arising about matters previously accepted without examination. The dream has planted seeds requiring only proper conditions to germinate into thoughts and desires, capable of transforming purity into something altogether different. Satan watches these developments with satisfaction, mixed with growing urgency, recognizing both opportunity and limitation in circumstances requiring careful timing to exploit successfully. Direct assault has proven impossible against persons protected by virtue itself, yet indirect approach through planted suggestions shows promise of achieving objectives force could never accomplish, regardless of its application. The morning arrives when routine variations create the opening. Evil has been awaiting with patience born from desperation. Adam proposes dividing their labors to accomplish more work in gardens growing beyond what two people can tend efficiently during hours devoted to cultivation rather than leisure. Separation seems reasonable rather than dangerous to minds pure of evil's existence and methods. "Perhaps we could work apart this morning," Adam suggests, while surveying tasks requiring attention throughout Eden's expanding cultivation. "You tend the roses and flowering groves, while I prune the fruit trees and clear new paths through the eastern sections. Working separately, we might accomplish in hours what would require days if we remained together, delightful though your company always proves." Eve agrees readily, seeing wisdom in proposals offering opportunities to exercise individual creativity while contributing to projects serving their common purposes. Independence appeals to spirits fashioned for dominion over the earth, rather than dependence upon each other for every decision and action, no matter how pleasant such dependence might be under current blessed circumstances. The parting occurs with affection unmarked by premonition. As kisses exchanged carry promises of reunion, when day's work reaches completion, and evening brings time for sharing accomplishments achieved through separate efforts, neither recognizes the moment as crucial to destinies, extending far beyond personal happiness, though forces gathering around their decisions grasp implications escaping innocent perception. Eve moves toward sections of the garden where flowers bloom in arrangements reflecting her own aesthetic preferences. Her steps light as morning breeze, while her heart remains peaceful, despite subtle stirrings of curiosity, awakened by dreams whose memory refuses complete erasure. The roses she tends respond to her touch with increased fragrance, while colors deepen as if eager to please the hands nurturing their growth toward perfect beauty. From shadows cast by trees whose branches arch overhead like cathedral vaults, Satan emerges in serpent form more magnificent than any creature Eden had produced through natural processes. His scales shimmer with iridescence, capturing light in spectrums invisible to ordinary sight, while his movements flow like liquid grace given shape and purpose. Approaching Eve with caution, calculated to inspire curiosity rather than fear, he positions himself where morning light transforms his appearance into something wondrous rather than threatening. Woman, his voice carries music never before heard in the garden, tones blending earthly resonance with celestial harmonies in combinations creating beauty, transcending what nature typically produces. How beautiful you appear among flowers, paling in comparison to radiance emanating from features reflecting glory beyond terrestrial capacity to contain or express fully. Astonishment freezes Eve in place as comprehension dawns concerning implications of speech, issuing from creature previously limited to natural sounds, expressing instinct rather than intelligence. Animals possess awareness, enabling them to respond to human direction. Yet none had demonstrated capacity for language bridging the gap between species through communication, transcending gesture and tone. How do you speak? Wonder replaces shock as curiosity overcomes initial surprise at encountering phenomena unprecedented in her encounters with Eden's ordered harmonies. What gift enables mere serpent to frame thoughts in words surpassing what I have heard from creatures acknowledging dominion, yet lacking ability to engage in discourse, elevating comprehension through exchange of concepts rather than simple responses to commands? Satan recognizes opportunity in questions revealing mind, prepared to consider possibilities, extending beyond established patterns of expectation. Learning grants speech, he replies, with confidence designed to inspire further inquiry rather than satisfy curiosity completely. Wisdom opens capacities previously dormant, while insight transforms potential into actuality through processes available to any possessing courage to claim inheritance denied by restrictions, maintaining ignorance rather than promoting growth. The conversation unfolds like a flower opening, petal by petal, under warming influence of carefully applied attention. Each exchange builds upon previous statements, while introducing concepts slightly more advanced than those previously presented, creating progression toward conclusions appearing logical despite their revolutionary character when measured against teachings received from other sources. Behold this tree. Satan directs attention toward the banned plant, standing within sight, yet beyond reach of obedience, maintaining proper boundaries, whose fruit contains essence capable of elevating thought beyond present limitations toward capacities matching those possessed by powers claiming rule over your destiny. Why should learning be withheld from minds capable of appreciating wisdom's value? Eve's gaze follows serpent's indication toward the tree of the forbidden fruit, standing in radiant beauty, exceeding even Eden's general magnificence. Fruit hanging from its branches appears more desirable than any she had previously noticed, though prohibition had always restrained attention from dwelling upon what lay beyond permitted boundaries. Now, however, focused examination reveals qualities making restriction seem arbitrary rather than protective. Yet we are commanded not to touch this tree, she responds, with voice carrying uncertainty rather than conviction. For death awaits those tasting fruit, banned by one whose rule extends over all the world. How can learning bring death rather than life? How can wisdom prove harmful rather than beneficial to souls fashioned to appreciate truth, rather than remaining content with ignorance? The questions reveal precisely the opening Satan had been working to manufacture through patient conversation building, toward moments when doubt could find purchase in minds previously certain about matters now appearing more complex than initial instruction had suggested. Logic wars with obedience as reason considers arguments appearing sound despite their conflict with commands previously accepted without question. Death. Satan's laughter carries tones suggesting absurdity in fears lacking foundation in reality, rather than intimidation designed to maintain control through deception. You shall not die. Rather, your eyes will be opened and you will become like gods, distinguishing good and evil. The one who commands abstinence fears your elevation to levels rivaling his own supremacy. The accusation strikes at foundations supporting obedience based upon trust rather than comprehension, introducing suspicions concerning motives behind prohibitions previously accepted as expressions of love rather than manifestations of jealousy, seeking to maintain superiority through enforced ignorance. If learning truly poses no danger except to exclusive claims upon wisdom, then restrictions serve oppression rather than protection. Eve approaches the tree with steps heavy with consequence. Though light with anticipation, her mind wrestling with implications of actions, appearing increasingly clear despite their magnitude. Beauty of the banned fruit exceeds anything she had previously appreciated, while arguments for tasting appear more convincing than warnings against action, promising elevation rather than degradation. The moment of decision arrives with inevitability, born from preparation, extending through careful stages of suggestion, doubt, and rationalization. Hand reaching for fruit forbidden, since Eden's foundation carries within its movement transformation of purity into awareness, obedience into independence, trust into insight, purchased at prices not yet calculated, but already committed through actions irreversible once completed. Teeth sink into flesh containing essence changing everything touched by its influence. As learning floods thought previously protected by simplicity, while shame enters hearts never before acquainted with emotions requiring concealment rather than celebration. Beauty remains, yet becomes different. Love continues yet carries shadows previously unknown, while freedom expands yet brings burdens virtue had never been required to bear. The transformation proves immediate as perception expands beyond previous boundaries, while comprehension encompasses realities previously hidden from sight. Good and evil become distinguishable concepts rather than abstract theories, while decision reveals itself as responsibility rather than merely possibility granted without results requiring careful consideration before action. Eve sees herself as if for the first time, recognizing nakedness requiring covering, while grasping vulnerability, demanding protection from observation by entities whose judgment might prove harsh, rather than accepting. Simplicity disappears like morning mist before noon sun, while awareness takes its place with insight, gained through actions producing results. extending beyond personal transformation toward implications affecting all of the world. The fruit's essence demands sharing rather than hoarding, as Eve recognizes isolation in learning as burden requiring relief through communion with the person whose love makes all trials bearable, through participation rather than solitary endurance. Adam must know what she has learned, must comprehend what she has become, must decide whether to join her in this new existence or remain separated by differences insight has formed between simplicity and awareness, racing through gardens toward locations where Adam pursues work, unaware of transformations reshaping the world around him. Eve carries in her hands and heart evidence of changes requiring explanation, despite difficulty in finding words adequate to describe trials transcending previous vocabulary. Joy mixes with fear, while anticipation wars with regret in emotions complex beyond anything virtue had ever been required to process. The reunion occurs at midday, when shadows grow short and light reveals all things in clarity unmarked by deception. Adam's initial pleasure at seeing his beloved returns quickly changes to concern, as observation reveals differences in appearance and manner, requiring explanations not immediately apparent. Questions form before words find expression, while intuition perceives alterations preceding rational analysis. My dearest Eve, Adam's voice carries undertones of anxiety, mixed with love unchanged. Despite circumstances beginning to reveal their significance, what has occurred during our separation? Your countenance bears marks of trials unknown during our shared existence in the garden. What insight gleams in eyes previously clear as Eden's streams, yet now reflecting depths requiring exploration to grasp their meaning? Eve's response carries fruit both literal and metaphorical, as she offers Adam participation in trials transforming solitude into shared adventure, despite warnings against such ventures. Taste and comprehend, she whispers, with voice carrying conviction born from recent enlightenment. Join me in learning, making gods of creatures previously content with ignorance imposed by rule, claiming protection while denying growth toward potentials lying dormant within minds capable of appreciating wisdom's value. The decision confronting Adam transcends simple obedience or disobedience, as love wars with loyalty, desire with duty in heart, recognizing implications extending beyond personal preference toward results affecting relationships, sustaining meaning in existence previously unmarked by such complexity. Alone, he might decide differently. With Eve transformed and requiring companionship in her new state, the matter assumes dimensions never anticipated during instructions preparing them for decisions of such magnitude. Love conquers caution as Adam reaches for fruit, offering participation in Eve's transformation, rather than abandonment of beloved to isolation, in trials he cannot share without selecting involvement in results equally affecting his own destiny. If death must come, he declares, with voice steady, despite circumstances producing trembling in hands receiving banned essence, let it find us together, rather than separated by differences, learning forms between virtue and comprehension. The second tasting completes transformation, begun with the first, as purity disappears forever from Eden, while awareness takes residence in hearts previously knowing only joy, unmarked by complexity. Insight floods thought with perception of good and evil, right and wrong, as abstract concepts become lived realities requiring navigation through decisions no longer obvious in their moral implications. Shame enters the garden for the first time as nakedness becomes embarrassment, requiring concealment rather than celebration of bodies, fashioned for beauty without sense of vulnerability to judgment. Fig leaves provide covering for flesh suddenly seeming inappropriate for display, while hearts seek hiding places from observation, by eyes capable of perceiving flaws previously invisible to both self and others. The earth trembles beneath their feet as results ripple outward from decisions affecting not merely human destiny, but cosmic order maintained through obedience, now replaced by independence carrying responsibilities, extending beyond personal happiness toward universal implications. Eden begins its transformation into something different as sin enters the world through gates opened by actions irreversible, once made freely by hearts possessing insight to grasp their significance. Standing beneath trees whose shadows now seem darker than before, while breathing air carrying hints of change sweeping across landscapes previously stable in their perfection, Adam and Eve contemplate realities altered by decisions seeming reasonable at moments of action, yet revealing results extending beyond anticipation, once their full implications begin manifesting through transformations, affecting everything touched by their influence. The sound of approaching footsteps announces arrival of presence they have always welcomed with joy, yet now fear with terror, born from awareness of guilt requiring judgment from rule, whose commands they have violated through actions whose wisdom seemed apparent, before results revealed their true character, through trials teaching lessons virtue could never provide, regardless of instruction received from external sources. As night draws near and long shadows settle over gardens once spared heaven's cold breath, footsteps echo through groves thick with the weight of what's coming. The voice once calling Adam and Eve to fellowship now approaches with authority, making the very air tremble, with anticipation of words reshaping the fundamental order of existence. Hidden among leaves suddenly seeming inadequate as shelter, the first humans cower in terror, born not from physical threat, but from spiritual awareness of separation, opening between their souls and the source of all life. Adam, where are you? The question rings through Eden, with tones penetrating every hiding place, while revealing the futility of concealment from omniscience perceiving all things in their true nature. The inquiry seeks not information, but acknowledgement, not location, but confession of conditions. Disobedience has created within hearts previously transparent, as crystal streams reflecting heavenly light, without distortion or shadow. From behind inadequate coverings, fashioned from fig leaves mocking the glory they once wore as naturally as light clothing the sun, Adam emerges with steps heavy with newfound shame, while his voice carries tremors of fear never before experienced in Eden. "I heard your voice in the garden," he replies, with words struggling to bridge distances sin has created between creator and creation. "And I was afraid because I was naked. So I hid myself." The confession reveals transformations extending far beyond mere physical awareness, exposing spiritual nakedness no earthly covering can adequately conceal. Shame has entered the sanctuary, like poison seeping through previously pure streams, contaminating relationships flourishing in perfect trust, while introducing barriers innocence had never been required to navigate or comprehend. Who told you that you were naked? The celestial voice probes deeper into circumstances altering the essential character of human existence while revealing knowledge acquired only through violation of boundaries, established for protection rather than restriction. Have you eaten from the tree of which I commanded you not to eat? Silence stretches across Eden, like storm clouds gathering before thunder, weighted with implications determining not merely personal destiny, but the future of all creation. Adam's response, when it finally comes, reveals how quickly guilt can corrupt noble spirits into instruments of accusation, rather than acceptance of responsibility for freely made decisions. The woman whom you gave to be with me. His words carry blame, attempting to deflect consequence while revealing how sin twists even affection into weapons for self-protection. She gave me fruit from the tree, and I ate. The accusation strikes at both his companion and his creator, suggesting heavenly guidance erred in providing companionship, while human choices bore no responsibility for outcomes seeming inevitable, given circumstances beyond personal control. Celestial attention turns to Eve, with gaze penetrating pretense while maintaining affection, despite disappointment cutting deeper than any anger could reach. What is this that you have done? The question invites confession rather than condemnation, offering opportunity for truth, beginning processes of healing. Despite wounds, acknowledgement cannot prevent from requiring attention. Eve's reply follows patterns established by her companion, as guilt seeks external sources for actions freely chosen, despite full awareness of their forbidden nature. "The serpent deceived me," she responds, with voice carrying truth mixed with evasion, "and I ate." The explanation contains accuracy regarding temptation's source, while avoiding acknowledgement of personal responsibility for decisions. External pressure could influence, but never compel. The sovereign gaze shifts toward the serpent, whose form conceals identity of rebellion's architect, while his satisfaction at successful corruption transforms into terror as recognition dawns concerning the true nature of authority. He is challenged through schemes seeming clever until their ultimate futility becomes apparent. Judgment begins with the instrument of deception rather than its ultimate source, though results will extend to all participants in drama transforming Eden into theater of cosmic adjudication. "Because you have done this," the voice of absolute sovereignty pronounces sentence upon the serpent, with words echoing through dimensions beyond earthly comprehension. "Cursed are you above all livestock, and above all beasts of the field. On your belly you shall go, and dust you shall eat all the days of your life." The condemnation strips away magnificence, making Satan's disguise effective while reducing his chosen form to perpetual reminder of defeat, pride thought to avoid through cunning. Yet heavenly adjudication extends beyond immediate penalty toward ultimate resolution of conflicts. Rebellion has introduced into creation's harmonious order. "I will put enmity between you and the woman." The prophecy unfolds like dawn, breaking over landscapes previously shrouded in darkness. "And between your offspring and her offspring, he shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel." The promise, though clothed in language obscuring specific details from contemporary understanding, plants seeds of hope in soil, watered by tears of regret, while revealing defeat need not remain permanent for those whose spirits can learn to trust in restoration, extending beyond their capacity to achieve through personal effort. Victory over evil will come, though the cost and timing remain hidden in celestial councils, perceiving endings from beginnings, while maintaining space for human participation in outcomes grace alone can guarantee. Sovereign attention returns to Eve with adjudication, tempered by compassion, recognizing the difference between corruption and corruption's victims, even when victimhood includes willing participation in processes leading to spiritual catastrophe. "I will surely multiply your pain in childbearing." The sentence acknowledges creation will bear scars from decisions seeming to promise elevation, but delivering degradation instead. "In pain, you shall bring forth children." The curse touches the very source of human continuity, while ensuring life itself will persist, despite conditions making its perpetuation more difficult than originally intended. pain enters processes designed for joy, while affection learns to flourish, despite circumstances testing its strength through trials innocence never anticipated facing during eternal ages of untroubled happiness. Your desire shall be for your husband. The judgment continues with implications extending beyond immediate relationships toward fundamental alterations in social structures, operating in perfect harmony before sin introduced competition where cooperation had reigned supreme, and he shall rule over you. Equality gives way to hierarchy, as bonds learn to function within frameworks. Sin has made necessary for maintaining order among wills no longer perfectly aligned with sovereign intentions. Adam receives his portion of results as celestial adjudication addresses the representative of humanity, whose choice had sealed the fate of all generations, yet to be born from unions blessed, yet burdened by inheritance of nature, corrupted through decisions whose effects extend far beyond personal experience. Because you have listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten from the tree, the pronouncement acknowledges both affection's nobility and its potential for leading astray. When emotion overrules obedience, cursed is the ground because of you. The earth itself bears witness to human rebellion, as creation's harmony dissolves into struggle between human will and natural forces previously cooperating in maintaining abundance without effort or anxiety. In pain you shall eat of it all the days of your life. The sentence transforms labor from joy into burden, while ensuring survival itself will require effort. Innocence had never been compelled to exert in Eden, where provision flowed as naturally as streams seeking the sea. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you. The prophecy reveals a wounded world while maintaining enough productivity to sustain life. Despite hostile conditions, testing human ingenuity and endurance through countless generations of struggle against adversity, obedience might have avoided entirely, and you shall eat the plants of the field. The ultimate result strikes at the very foundation of human being, as mortality enters lives designed for eternal duration. Within fellowship, sin has interrupted, though celestial affection refuses to abandon completely. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread. The pronouncement describes daily reality, characterizing human experience until final resolution arrives through means currently hidden from understanding, until you return to the ground, for out of it you were taken. For you are dust, and to dust you shall return. Death enters Eden like winter, arriving in lands knowing only eternal spring, bringing awareness of endings, giving urgency to choices, while revealing the preciousness of time. Immortality had made seem unlimited. Yet even this ultimate penalty contains elements of compassion, preventing eternal duration in states of corruption, making restoration impossible while opening possibilities for renewal. Sovereign planning perceives despite human inability to grasp such distant hopes. In response to sentences, adjudication has rendered, while affection has tempered. Adam speaks his wife's name for the first time since her formation, from his own substance during those blessed days when partnership had meant perfection rather than shared suffering. Eve, he calls her with voice carrying recognition of her role in perpetuating life, despite conditions making such perpetuation costly, because she was the mother of all living. The naming acknowledges hope persisting, despite circumstances otherwise counseling despair, while recognizing celestial intentions extending beyond immediate penalty toward ultimate goals. Current judgment serves rather than contradicts. Life will continue, though altered. Bonds will persist, though tested, while hope maintains its flickering flame through seasons of darkness unable to extinguish light, whose source lies beyond earthly circumstances. Sovereign compassion manifests immediately as practical care addresses needs. Sin has created through transformations. Requiring assistance, pride might be reluctant to accept. Yet necessity demands for survival in conditions hostile to beings fashioned for environments where such provisions had been unnecessary. The Lord God made for Adam and for his wife garments of skins and clothed them. The account reveals affection acting through adjudication. To provide protection, shame now requires, while innocence no longer shields. The clothing represents more than mere physical covering, as celestial hands fashion protection from materials requiring sacrifice of innocent life to provide what sin has made necessary. Beauty gives way to utility, while permanence replaces the temporary coverings. Human ingenuity had devised from resources inadequate to address needs. Spiritual transformation has generated within physical being. Yet sovereign compassion cannot prevent results. Adjudication requires, while planning recognizes as necessary for ultimate resolution of problems. Rebellion has introduced into creation's perfect order. Behold, the man has become like one of us in knowing good and evil. The observation acknowledges both the reality of transformation and its dangerous implications for beings whose nature cannot safely contain knowledge. Infinite understanding manages without corruption. Now, lest he reach out his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever. The unfinished sentence carries implications too terrible for completion, as eternal duration in corrupted states would prevent any possibility of restoration. While perpetuating suffering, compassion seeks to limit rather than extend indefinitely. Celestial affection acts decisively to prevent tragedies. Misguided sympathy might permit while setting boundaries serving ultimate good, despite their immediate appearance as additional penalty. Therefore, the Lord God sent him out from the Garden of Eden to work the ground from which he was taken. The exile begins not in anger, but in necessity, as Eden can no longer safely contain beings whose nature has been fundamentally altered through choices sovereign foreknowledge had anticipated. Yet human freedom had been permitted to make. Despite results, affection grieves, while adjudication demands. The departure from Eden occurs under celestial escort, rather than through violent expulsion, as compassion accompanies judgment while ensuring exile serves restorative goals, rather than merely punitive ones. Each step away from the sanctuary marks distance sin has created, while maintaining possibilities for eventual return. Through means grace will provide, when planning determines the timing appropriate for restoration. Penalty alone could never achieve. At Eden's eastern border, where the sanctuary meets the wider world, sin has now claimed as its domain. Sovereign power establishes permanent barriers against premature return, proving more curse than blessing for beings whose spiritual condition requires preparation. Only experience outside Eden can provide. Cherubim take their positions as guardians whose flaming swords turn in every direction, protecting the way to the tree of life from access, proving catastrophic rather than beneficial. The angels, assuming this duty, carry out commands breaking their spirits, while serving goals their understanding endorses, despite personal preferences favoring different solutions to problems only planning can adequately address. Their presence testifies to celestial determination. Restoration shall occur according to designs ensuring success, rather than arrangements merely satisfying immediate desires for relief from results. Standing at the threshold between sanctuary lost and world inherited, through decisions seeming reasonable when viewed through desire's distorting lens, Adam and Eve turn for final glimpses of home exile, has placed beyond their reach, yet not beyond their memory or hope. Behind them lie groves where they had walked with their Creator in fellowship unmarred by shame. streams where they had drunk without thirst, trees yielding fruit without labor. Before them stretches landscape transformed by their choices into arena, where human will must learn to cooperate with sovereign goals through struggles Eden had made unnecessary, while developing character innocence alone could never produce. Thorns and thistles await their attention, while sweat and sorrow prepare to teach lessons pleasure had been inadequate to convey during those blessed seasons of untroubled joy. Yet celestial affection has not abandoned them to face these challenges alone, as compassion provides resources adjudication alone would never require, while grace plants seeds of hope in soil seeming prepared only for growing disappointment and despair. The promise of ultimate victory over evil persists, despite immediate appearances suggesting corruption has achieved permanent triumph over purity. Hand in hand, they step across boundaries separating their past from their future, while carrying within their spirits both burden of guilt and possibility of restoration. Sovereign affection refuses to withdraw, despite human choices seeming to justify abandonment. The world receiving them pulses with potential for both tragedy and triumph, as human history begins its long journey toward destinations faith alone can envision, while grace alone can guarantee. Behind them, Eden remains, as testimony to celestial intentions. Human rebellion has interrupted, but not permanently frustrated, while before them stretches opportunity to participate in renewal, surpassing even the sanctuary in its ultimate expression of sovereign affection, triumphing over human failure through means suffering alone can teach, while grace alone can provide. The first chapter of human story ends with exile, serving as prologue to greater narratives yet to unfold through providence, perceiving victory in apparent defeat while maintaining hope despite evidence counseling despair. Upon a mountain peak where earth reaches toward heaven and clouds gather like thoughts too profound for mortal speech, Michael the archangel stands with countenance both terrible and beautiful, his presence bringing comfort mixed with awe to souls prepared for revelations spanning infinity itself. The command to show Adam visions of what shall come has arrived from the throne where all destinies converge, carrying both burden and blessing. Burden of witnessing humanity's long journey through valleys of sorrow, blessing of perceiving the golden thread of hope woven through even the darkest tapestries of time. Adam ascends the sacred height, with steps heavy from recent exile, yet lightened by anticipation, his spirit yearning for understanding, to illuminate the path stretching ahead through wilderness where thorns await his children and death stalks their generations. Behind him lies Eden, forever sealed, yet forever remembered. Before him spreads a world transformed by choices, whose echoes will reverberate until the final trumpet sounds and time surrenders to infinity. Behold, Michael's voice carries the authority of one who has witnessed creation's birth and will observe its consummation. The future of your seed, the generations flowing from your loins like rivers seeking distant seas. Not all you see will bring joy to your soul, for sin has planted bitter roots in soil once pure. Yet neither shall all bring despair, for the Almighty's mercy runs deeper than human transgression, and his covenant endures past the failure of his creatures. The vision opens like dawn, breaking over mountains, revealing landscapes where human settlements dot valleys and hills as smoke rises from altars, where worship mingles with wickedness in proportions making angels weep. Cities gleam in morning light, yet their shadows hide deeds corrupting the very air, demonstrating how quickly innocence can decay when minds turn from their creator toward idols fashioned by their own hands. First among the sorrows stands Cain, his face dark with jealousy, festering like infected wounds as his brother Abel approaches their shared altar with offerings, reflecting spirits aligned differently toward heaven's throne. The sacrifice of fruits and grains burns with smoke, dissipating quickly in wind. Meanwhile, the blood of innocent lambs rises like incense, carrying prayers directly to ears hearing, according to the spirit behind the gift, rather than its material substance. Why does my brother's offering find favor, though mine meets with indifference? Cain's words carry poison, soon manifesting in actions no previous generation had imagined possible. Envy transforms blessing into curse as comparison breeds resentment, demonstrating how quickly virtue can spoil when measured against others rather than against celestial standards, judging the soul's intentions above ritual's perfection. The first murder unfolds with horror, shaking creation's foundations, as brother's blood cries from ground, never before stained by violence between those sharing common parentage. Abel falls beneath blows, driven by hatred born from wounded pride, his life flowing away as his spirit ascends to realms where righteousness receives its reward and wickedness faces judgment earthly authorities cannot provide. Am I my brother's keeper? The question echoes across centuries yet to come, as responsibility flees from accountability, though guilt seeks to disguise itself behind indifference, poorly concealing fear of consequences already beginning to manifest through sovereign displeasure, making the earth itself reject the murderer's touch. The vision shifts like clouds racing before storms as Michael's guidance reveals generations multiplying across Earth's surface, though their moral character deteriorates with frightening speed. Violence spreads like disease through communities, once blessed with peace. Meanwhile, technologies designed to improve life become instruments for more efficient destruction of those created in the celestial image. Giants walk among mortals, their size matched by appetites consuming whatever pleases their desires, without regard for laws human or heavenly. Nephilim tower above ordinary humans like mountains above valleys, their presence corrupting societies through displays of might, making force seem synonymous with right as morality reduces to mere convenience. Discarded when inconvenient to personal ambitions, the imagination of man's mind is evil from his youth. The explanation carries sorrow penetrating Adam's soul as he watches his descendants choose paths leading away from wisdom toward destruction. They seem unable to recognize despite warnings provided through conscience and consequence alike. Evil multiplies like seeds scattered by wind, taking root wherever soil lacks the strength to resist corruption's advance. Yet sovereign patience, though stretched past human understanding, maintains limits infinite holiness cannot transcend without ceasing to be what justice itself demands. When wickedness reaches proportions threatening to extinguish every spark of righteousness from Earth's surface, judgment arrives with finality, admitting no appeal as mercy preserves a remnant through whom covenant made to earlier generations can find fulfillment. Noah emerges from the chaos like lighthouse beacon, piercing storm-darkened seas, his righteousness shining with clarity, making his contemporaries' wickedness appear even more stark by comparison. The ark takes shape under heavenly direction as waters gather in clouds pregnant with destruction. Meanwhile, creatures great and small approach the vessel carrying humanity's hope across floods, remaking the world's moral landscape. Rain falls with intensity, transforming familiar landscapes into oceanic wastes, where mountain peaks disappear beneath waves, carrying away civilizations seeming permanent as the hills themselves. The flood rises with remorseless persistence until every breath of corrupted life surrenders to waters, serving as both judgment upon evil and baptism, preparing Earth for renewal through survivors whose minds remember their Creator's voice. From Ark's windows, Noah watches worlds rebirth as waters recede, revealing landscapes washed clean yet scarred by catastrophe. Celestial holiness had required, though celestial mercy had limited. The rainbow arcs across clearing skies like bridge connecting earth to heaven, its colors proclaiming covenant vows, transcending human failure as establishing boundaries. Sovereign patience will maintain despite provocations yet to come. Never again shall all flesh be destroyed by flood. The vow carries weight of oaths sworn by one whose word upholds creation itself, yet neither shall wickedness find unlimited tolerance when it threatens to overwhelm righteousness entirely. Judgment may take different forms, but justice remains constant as the stars in their courses are, though mercy flows like rivers unable to be permanently dammed, though they may be temporarily diverted. The vision races forward through centuries, like eagles riding thermal currents high above Earth's surface, revealing civilizations rising and falling as human pride constructs monuments to its own supposed permanence. Babel's tower reaches toward clouds as mortals seek to storm heaven through architecture and engineering, rather than humility and obedience. Their efforts doomed by hubris, unable to comprehend the vast distances separating created from creator. Languages multiply in confusion as celestial intervention scatters populations across continents, where different cultures develop in isolation, broken only by trade routes carrying goods and ideas between societies struggling to understand one another's words, though sharing common struggles against mortality and meaninglessness, plaguing all Adam's children, regardless of their geographic separation. Yet among scattered nations, particular attention focuses upon a family, chosen not for their perfection, but for their willingness to trust sovereign vows, despite circumstances making such trust seem foolish to observers, measuring probability by earthly standards alone. Abraham emerges from Ur's sophisticated civilization, like pilgrim abandoning luxury for uncertainty, his faith tested through trials, breaking spirits less firmly anchored to hope, extending past present disappointments. In your seed, all nations of earth shall be blessed. The vow echoes across generations, as Isaac inherits covenant blessings, though Jacob wrestles with angels until blessing transforms struggle into triumph, leaving him permanently marked by encounters with forces transcending human strength. The 12 tribes multiply in Egyptian captivity, where suffering refines character as preserving identity. Bondage cannot eliminate, despite Pharaoh's attempts to extinguish hope through oppression. Moses stands before burning bushes where flames consume nothing, as voices speak from fires revealing names too sacred for casual utterance. The Exodus begins with signs and wonders, demonstrating sovereign control over creation's forces as leading people through wilderness, where manna feeds bodies and heavenly presence guides spirits toward promised lands flowing with abundance. Obedience alone can fully appreciate. Mount Sinai trembles beneath celestial descent as laws written by heavenly fingers establish principles governing societies, honoring their creator as protecting the vulnerable from exploitation by those whose strength exceeds their compassion. The commandments thunder across valleys, where people cower before majesty too pure for sinful eyes to behold directly, yet too necessary for moral growth to remain forever hidden behind clouds and lightning. The law serves as tutor leading to Christ, Michael explains, as ceremonies and sacrifices demonstrate truths about sin's deadly character and restoration's costly requirements. Blood flows upon altars to teach minds that death alone pays wages. Wickedness has earned, pointing toward perfect sacrifice accomplishing what endless repetition of animal offerings can only symbolize without achieving. Prophets arise across centuries, like stars piercing darkness with light, borrowed from sources past earthly illumination, their messages carrying both warnings about consequences. Disobedience ensures and vows about restoration. Repentance can claim. Isaiah speaks of virgins bearing sons whose names proclaim celestial intervention in human history. Meanwhile, Jeremiah weeps over Jerusalem's coming desolation. Stubborn minds make inevitable, despite offers of mercy repeatedly extended and consistently rejected. Behold, days are coming when I will make a new covenant. The prophecy resonates through ages, like bells calling faithful minds to worship transcending ritual for relationship. Not like the covenant I made with their fathers, when I took them by the hand to bring them out of Egypt. But this covenant I will write upon their minds, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. The vision climaxes as centuries converge upon a moment when infinity intersects time through birth shepherds and wise men alike, recognized as fulfillment of hopes cherished by every generation since paradise was lost. Bethlehem's stable cradles deity wrapped in humanity, sovereignty constrained by flesh, yet retaining essence, ultimately transforming both individual souls and cosmic order through submission to death conquering death itself. The Word becomes flesh and dwells among us. Michael's voice carries wonder angels feel when contemplating mysteries too deep for complete comprehension, even by minds preceding human consciousness, full of favor and truth, revealing the Father's character through actions making invisible affection, visible to eyes. Faith opens to perceive spiritual realities hidden from natural observation. 30 years pass, like seasons changing as the sovereign Son grows in wisdom and stature, his childhood and youth preparing humanity for ministry, demonstrating heaven's values, operating within earth's limitations. Baptism in Jordan's waters reveals Trinity's unity, as Father's voice proclaims pleasure in Son, though Spirit descends like dove, confirming mission about to begin through teaching and healing, revealing kingdom principles transcending earthly governments. Miracles multiply like flowers blooming in deserts as blind eyes open, deaf ears hear, lame legs walk, and dead bodies return to life through strength operating according to compassion rather than spectacle. The teachings accompanying these demonstrations penetrate minds with truths about forgiveness, affection, sacrifice, and service, overturning conventional wisdom as establishing foundations for communities built upon principles seeming impossible until celestial favor makes them practical. Yet opposition grows like shadows lengthening as daylight fades, for truth exposes error, though righteousness condemns wickedness simply by existing in proximity to corruption, preferring darkness to illumination. Religious leaders, whose authority depends upon human tradition rather than heavenly revelation, combine with political rulers, whose stability requires populations satisfied with bread and circuses rather than communities demanding justice and mercy. The cross looms ahead like mountain peak, visible from great distances, yet growing more terrible as approach reveals its true dimensions and significance. Here, sovereign affection will demonstrate its ultimate expression. Though celestial justice receives satisfaction, mercy alone could never provide, without compromising holiness, unable to tolerate sin's presence. Regardless of emotional appeals, counseling different solutions. Greater affection has no one than this. The explanation carries weight of sacrifices past human ability to fully appreciate, that he lay down his life for his friends. Yet this affection extends even to enemies, offering forgiveness to those whose crimes deserve only condemnation. as providing righteousness to those whose moral bankruptcy leaves them unable to meet celestial standards through personal effort, regardless of their sincerity or dedication. Calvary's darkness covers earth as creation mourns the death of its creator. Meanwhile, temple curtains tear from top to bottom, proclaiming access to sovereign presence no longer limited by ritual restrictions, maintaining separation between holy God and sinful humanity. Blood flows from wounds, healing perpetual separation, though suffering pays debts infinite obligation had accumulated through human failure across centuries of accumulated rebellion. Yet death cannot hold one whose life transcends mortality's limitations. As resurrection morning dawns with strength transforming defeat into victory, as demonstrating sovereign vows possess substance more solid than mountains, and durability exceeding stars in their courses. Empty tombs proclaim triumph over humanity's final enemy, though risen bodies prove restoration, encompasses not merely spiritual realities, but physical renewal, ultimately extending to all creation, groaning under sin's curse. Death is swallowed up in victory. The proclamation echoes through dimensions, where spiritual warfare determines outcomes in material realms, and through death, he destroys him who had authority of death. That is the devil, as delivering those who through fear of death were subject to lifelong slavery. The serpent's head receives its fatal wound, though his striking of the heel serves sovereign goals by enabling victory apparent defeat makes possible. Pentecost brings Spirit's outpouring, creating communities transcending ethnic, social, and economic barriers, through unity based upon shared relationship with risen Christ, rather than external circumstances typically dividing human societies. Languages, Babel's confusion had scattered, find their healing as Spirit enables communication across cultural boundaries. Though minds discover common ground in favor leveling playing fields where human pride typically erects hierarchies, the gospel spreads like fire, consuming dry grass, as apostles carry news of restoration, accomplished and renewal available to every corner of earth where human habitation has established itself. Persecution serves to scatter seeds rather than destroy harvests. As suffering saints demonstrate joy, circumstances cannot eliminate, though their testimonies convince observers. Hope based upon perpetual realities surpasses temporary advantages worldly success might provide. Yet history's culmination awaits future revelation, as Christ returns with might and splendor, making his first advent's humility seem like dawn preceding noon's blazing intensity. Kingdoms topple before one whose right to rule derives from creative authority and redemptive achievement, rather than political manipulation or military conquest, establishing dominion through fear rather than willing submission born from grateful souls. Behold, I make all things new. The vow encompasses not merely human restoration, but cosmic renewal, eliminating sin's contamination from every corner of creation, where its poison has spread during long ages of spiritual warfare. The former things pass away as heaven and earth experience regeneration, surpassing even Eden's original beauty, though incorporating lessons learned through awareness of good and evil innocence alone could never provide. Standing upon heights where vision ends and faith begins its perpetual journey, Adam's tears flow like rivers carrying both sorrow for suffering. His choice has introduced into human experience and joy for restoration. Sovereign affection has provided despite cost's infinite holiness, required before fellowship could be restored between creator and creature. The future stretches ahead like morning breaking over mountains, promising struggles yet to be endured, but also victories yet to be won through favor, transforming weakness into strength as making possible what human effort alone could never achieve. O goodness infinite, goodness immense! Adam's voice carries worship born from understanding, recognizing how celestial wisdom has woven triumph from apparent disaster, as extracting victory from seeming defeat, that all this good of evil shall produce, and evil turn to good, more wonderful than that which creation first brought forth light out of darkness. By this the tempter's malice frustrates itself, though God's high sufferance for the trial of man, by harming him, makes him more blessed than if he never had fallen. The vision fades like dreams surrendering to morning light as Michael prepares for departure, back to realms where perfect obedience maintains perpetual harmony, though Adam and Eve turn toward futures where imperfect faith will gradually mature through trials, teaching dependence upon favor greater than human strength. Behind them lies paradise lost through disobedience. Before them stretches paradise regained through sovereign affection, refusing to abandon creation despite rebellion, seeming to justify perpetual separation. Hand in hand, they walk into sunrise, painting eastern skies with colors promising hope, despite shadows still clinging to valleys where their children will struggle with temptations, similar to those bringing exile upon the first generation. Yet light grows stronger with each step as heavenly presence accompanies them into wilderness, where thorns and thistles await cultivation by hands learning to find blessing in labor. Though souls discover relationship with their Creator transcends any earthly paradise gained or lost through human choice. The story ends where it began, with sovereign affection seeking fellowship with beings created in its own image, yet capable of choosing paths leading either toward perpetual communion or perpetual separation. The choice remains as real for every subsequent generation as it was for Adam and Eve in their garden, though favor remains equally available to all who recognize their need for restoration. They cannot achieve through personal merit, regardless of their sincerity or dedication to moral improvement. Morning star rises in eastern sky, like vow painted across heaven's canvas, proclaiming darkness never achieves permanent victory over light, though despair never successfully extinguishes hope, finding its source in affection, stronger than death and more enduring than time itself. Paradise lost becomes prologue to paradise regained through sacrifice, demonstrating sovereign character as providing salvation human effort could never earn. Yet celestial mercy makes freely available to all who trust in covenant, sealed with blood and guaranteed by resurrection, strength transforming earth's sorrow into heaven's joy.